How to analyse the data from stony coral tissue loss disease monitoring.
Now that you've collected the data, it's time to analyse it to determine the prevalence of stony coral tissue loss disease on your reefs. This video will show you how to analyse the data you've collected while monitoring your reefs for stony coral tissue loss disease and determine when to revisit your monitoring sites. Using the data sheets you've compiled for each survey site and date, enter your data into a new summary Excel or open source spreadsheet so you can keep an electronic record of the data you've collected. If you had several people collecting data at the same site, these data should be summed in a single spreadsheet as long as there was no overlap between their monitoring areas. You need to make sure that corals are not double counted. Make sure you keep a record of who collected the data so they can answer any questions you might have. With the data entered, calculate the prevalence or percentage of corals affected by stony coral tissue loss disease, both within coral species or group and across the reef site. The percentage of corals within species or group affected by stony coral tissue loss disease can be calculated by adding up the number of corals within species or group that were listed as either diseased or recently dead, and then dividing that by the total number of corals tallied within that species and multiplying by 100. It's also important to total the number of diseased and recently dead corals across all species or groups at the site, and the total number of live, diseased, and recently dead corals across all species or groups at the site. In order to determine how the disease prevalence of each species or group contributes to the total percentage of diseased corals at a site, add up the number of corals within species that were identified as diseased and recently dead, and divide that by the total number of corals that were counted and multiply by 100. This should include the number of live, diseased, and recently dead corals across all species and groups, and will give you an idea of the species most affected by the disease at the site. Now you can easily calculate the total prevalence of or percentage of all the diseased and recently dead corals at the site by summing the percentages of diseased and recently dead corals within each surveyed susceptible species and group. MPA Connect's reporting template for stony coral tissue loss disease can provide suggestions on how you can describe your findings. Please enter your findings about disease prevalence into AGRA's website using its coral survey form. This will not only help you to document disease prevalence on your reefs, but your findings will be shared with others from the region who are keen to learn from your experiences with this new disease. There's a video on the AGRA website that demonstrates how to enter your data. If you have any suspicions of stony coral tissue loss disease, then it's important to revisit the survey sites in question and repeat your monitoring after about 3 days to a week. Unlike other coral diseases, the progression of stony coral tissue loss disease is very fast, so repeating the roving diver surveys at the sites in question will help you to correctly identify the disease. The repeat photos taken of suspicious corals during each survey will help you document any disease progression. If you do identify stony coral tissue loss disease during your roving diver surveys, inform your relevant official partners so policies designed to slow its spread throughout your reefs and across the region can be implemented swiftly. You can then begin to implement treatment protocols to try and reduce disease progression. You can also establish these survey sites as permanent monitoring sites to track the long-term impacts of stony coral tissue loss disease and inform any coral rescue and restoration efforts. If you haven't already done so, it's important to implement outreach and education activities so that stakeholders are aware of the disease and know what they can do to help reduce its spread throughout your reefs. For more information, please go to the Coral Disease page on GCFI's website at this link, or go to the Coral Disease page on AGRA's website at this link.
We'd like to thank NOAA's Coral Reef Conservation Program, the Turks and Caicos Reef Fund, and AGRA, the Atlantic and Gulf Rapid Reef Assessment Program, for helping us to create this video. And thanks to many others who helped with reviewing the video.